This is Travis Wayne Goodsell, and I've decided to do a switch. I've been telling you guys that I was going to do other symbols, like St. Patrick, the Norse god Tyr, Chinese New Year of the dog, Jesus as a fish, but I've decided to go straight for the jugular, the Mormons. Because the Mormons are directly implicated by the ancient prophets, by John the Revelator. And so it's necessary to understand the Mormon view of the last days Messiah, because they too understand him. It's just the members are not aware that they do understand. They've been led astray by their church. Thus the problem. And it's quite a complex discussion. This may be longer than an hour to go over. Because where do I begin? I've done the books, the research, the videos discussing the Illuminati, Freemasonic, William Morgan conspiracy theory connection. That's what I discovered when I actually went back and decided, hey, I need to study church history. You know, my neighbor and fellow church member at my local ward congregation is telling me that Joseph Smith had 2 guns in his possession. And I had only known about 1 gun because of my 3rd great grandfather, John Solomon Fulmer, who gave it to Joseph Smith. And then Bill is telling me, hey, you know, the church has always said nothing about Joseph ever having a gun at all, that he was innocent as a lamb, you know, that thing that John Taylor wrote about him in the Doctrine and Covenants. So yes, if you're not familiar with Mormons watching this video, I'm going to be using terminology that you're going to be unfamiliar with. Doctrine and Covenants is Mormon scripture, distinctive Mormon scripture from the Bible. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Mormons at all, you're gonna be a little lost. So that's one of the difficulties of this. You know, I've already done the video series about the last days Messiah according to the Jewish understanding. I've done it according to the Christian understanding, and that was quick and easy for the Christians. And I did the Egyptian version, and so now I'm doing the Mormon version. So in each of those versions, I have to use the language and understanding of each of those groups. And so this is the Mormon version, and so I have to use the Mormon understanding and the Mormon terminology. So if you don't know, you're going to have to flip to Google to do a quick definition study for what I'm talking about here. And now I've just wasted several minutes talking about that. So yeah, a short recap of my previous publications, posts, blogs, etc., vlogs on the subject is that the Book of Mormon is not a history of the Native American Indians. It is not a translation from an ancient Egyptian document. Plain and simple, Mormons are furious with me. They don't like me. They refuse to watch my site. They give me thumbs down. You know, I've betrayed them. No, I was betrayed. I was deceived for 48 years. So screw you. And if Mormons are going to remain in ignorance without doing their own research, and you got to know how to research. Mormons typically get higher education. They get degrees. They do thesis papers. So why can't they do it with the church? You do it for your job, but then when it comes to church, you're like, nope, not going to do it. Fake news. Come on. So screw you guys if you think you're going to hate me for telling the truth. So, I studied Egyptian, independent of the apologetics at BYU. And that's what they are. They're not scholars. They peer review among each other. Because the peer review by their fellow world scholars, they get shot down in flames. I will show you one example. Come on, where is it? It's Larson. Morrison. Ah, there it is. Buried under all these books. Okay. All right. Yeah, wearing my Chinese New Year of the Dog for 2018 t-shirt. Okay. This is a peer-reviewed publication, not just a commentary, not just a statement, not an article. This is a full book. This is where I got my copy of the Joseph Smith papyri and that Joseph claimed was the Book of Abraham and the Book of Joseph. Robert K. Rittner, I understand, was John Gee, who's the Mormon apologist at BYU, the supposed expert in Egyptian, even though he only does Coptic. He opted out of doing ancient Egyptian research and focuses on Coptic. Oh, isn't that safe? And so Robert K. Rittner was John Gee's instructor when John Gee went to school to study Egyptian. And so John Gee, of course, has had stuff to say about the papyri. And so Rittner, John Gee's teacher, wrote a whole book that the church is wrong, Joseph Smith was wrong, etc., etc., etc. So that is the world's peer review of BYU scholars in Egyptology. And they all say Joseph was wrong. And so the church then did the gospel topic essays, historicity, and translation of the Book of Abraham. And they just threw Joseph Smith under the bus. Their own church, of which Joseph founded, they threw him under the bus. And they pulled the stunt that President Oaks did in this last conference in October. Scientific truth is not always true. Spiritual truth is the real truth. Yeah. I can't believe Mormons are falling for this. I know the church is true. I feel it in every fiber of my being. No, you don't. Cut it out. So, yeah, I'm furious with Mormons. I'm furious for being betrayed and the manner in which I was betrayed. Because I was attacked by Mormons. Chased out by Mormons. And then I went and did my research and found out why Mormons are being such butts here in Utah. I now understood, because I grew up in Southern California, and my fellow Mormons, when I would meet them at church, and they'd talk about the vacation they went on to Utah the previous week, and they would say, man, the Utah people were mean to us. I don't like going to Utah. Utah doesn't like outsiders. They don't like immigrants. They don't like aliens. They're alt-right conservative. So Mormons outside of Utah are not Utah Mormons. Although Utah Mormons have been migrating out. And so from what I understand, California has a alt-right conservative base of Mormons there now. But back in my day, no, we were pretty much liberal. My parents were the ones who were the migrant infiltrators outside of Utah. So, yeah, the Book of Mormon, not true what they say about it. However, during my analysis, there is Freemasonic coding in the Book of Mormon, and I've already identified Freemasonic influence. The church only admits that, yes, Joseph Smith became a Freemason in 1842. He was a Freemason influenced, or he was influenced by Freemasonry way back when. William Morgan and Hiram. Joseph Smith Sr. on Hiram's birth certificate named him the Freemasonic spelling of Hiram. You know, the Hiram Abiff. And after the 1827, because 1826 was when the William Morgan thing hit, and then the press went wild with the story in 1827, and that caused the anti-Freemasonic movement. And that's when Hiram had his name changed to a different spelling so that anti-Freemasons wouldn't connect Hiram to Freemasonry and persecute him. And so, yes, the Book of Mormon has Freemasonry in it. Solomon of Temple of Nephi. The concept of writing records on gold plates. Treasure being knowledge. Jacob. And so, yeah. And then William Morgan talked about a conspiracy against the United States. That's the whole controversy about his disappearance and smuggling out of the United States by the Freemasons of the lodge that Joseph Smith Sr. was a part of. And William Morgan was in the same jail that Joseph Smith was found to have been arrested as a glass looker and was fined $1 something for a misdemeanor charge of glass looking. Same jail. And William Morgan was smuggled out of the country right around the time that Joseph Smith was supposed to be visiting the angel, which Mormons believe was named Moroni, but Joseph Smith had always called him Nephi. And he called him Nephi after the events, after the church was organized. So those are key things to pay attention to when you're doing research. You know, why wasn't there any documentation at the time of the event that was supposed to be taking place? Wouldn't that make everything so simple? You know, he waited until 1838 to write what became the official history of the church, which then the church denounced when church historians realized, hey, wait a minute, we're finding evidence that contradicts the history of the church. It appears that somebody has altered the history of the church after Joseph died. That's when the name was changed from Nephi to Moroni, was after Joseph Smith died. So yeah, the church has been covering up church history. Why? Well, it's because the church was infiltrated. It follows the pattern that I talked about. You know, a brother conflict over birthright blessing. You know, in the church it's understood as the president of the church. He's the birthright blessing. And he was murdered. And Brigham Young took over. Joseph Smith did not appoint Brigham Young. Brigham Young appointed himself in a debate against Sidney Rigdon. He and Sidney Rigdon held a town debate over who should be the leader of the church. And Sidney Rigdon didn't want to be the leader of the church. He just wanted to be the overseer of the church. Brigham Young said, no, it's going to be me. And so then decades later, you get Mormons writing in their journal, I remember the day that Brigham Young spoke, and I remember the ghost of Joseph Smith overcoming him, and he looked just like Joseph Smith. He talked just like Joseph Smith. Yeah, I call BS. They were rigging it to give legitimacy to Brigham Young, along with other things that they did with their journals. So journals are not to be trusted back then because they were altered for a biased agenda. But that's all part of the last days Messiah understanding for the Mormons. I did the other video going over Doctrine and Covenants 85. So I explained that. That's caused quite a controversy in the church in these early days once it was put out the year before Brigham Young died. Do we need to go over it again? Let's go over it again, because I'm pretty sure you guys haven't been watching my other video on it. And so if by chance you're watching this one and for the first time seeing my site, there's a lot of information you're missing. Section 85. It's claimed to have been given in 1832, and they cite the history of the church. Supposedly it was a letter of the prophet to W.W. Phelps in Independence, Missouri. W.W. Phelps was taking matters into his own hands and getting his own revelation for things and how to run the church. And Joseph Smith actually did go to or communicate with W.W. Phelps about this matter, but he repented and nothing happened to him. And so the context here seems a little strange that we'd still keep it even though it was a failed prophecy. And Mormons just brush it off, well, he repented, so, you know, it's all negated. But they're assuming that it refers to W.W. Phelps as a bishop in Independence, Missouri. Bishops are just religious people. Remember that. He was in charge of a congregation, but he was not a government official. And so that's something to watch out for when you're reading this, because in verses 7 and 8 is the controversial parts. Verse 7, and it shall come to pass that I, the Lord, will send one mighty and strong. Notice, it is not a conditional revelation. It's a direct, I will send. It's as if God had said, okay, W.W. Phelps, you've blown it, I'm replacing you. I am sending one mighty and strong. Why would they call him one mighty and strong? Why not just say, I'm going to send in a replacement for you, W.W. Phelps, you're not doing your job. You know, that's not what happened. This is something weird. This is a prophecy. And so when I get to Joseph F. Smith and his first presidency statement, you're going to understand where I'm going with this. Because Mormons, back when this was released in 1876, the year before Brigham Young died, they all went, oh, wow, this is a prophecy. This is going to happen in the future. And they all understood what verse 8 was referring to as the man who was called of God and appointed. They all knew, but by the time of Joseph F. Smith, he denounced it. And he has to because of who verse 8 is implicating. Again, 7 is not referring to W.W. Phelps. It's a different person in the future. And because this one mighty and strong is holding the scepter of power in his hand. That is not a religious leader. That's a government leader. And W.W. Phelps as a bishop is not to be a government leader. And that's not what was done. That's not the organized system back then or now. And so then, clothed with light for a covering, okay, great, the spiritual thing. Whose mouth shall utter words, eternal words, okay, great orator. Well, his bowels shall be a fountain of truth, you know, all religious stuff. But here we go again, something else out of the ordinary with a bishop. Because bishops, you know, they're not going to hold a scepter of power. And they're not going to set in order the house of God. The house of God is the temple. Bishops do not have authority over temples. We have temple presidents now, but back then, only the president of the church. So what this is talking about is somebody who is going to replace the president of the church and have government authority. Government authority, religious authority to lead as king and high priest. The great king, the great high priest, Melchizedek. This is about the last days Messiah. And it was assumed that Joseph Smith wrote this, but it was put in 1876. It was not put in 1844 when Joseph Smith died. It was not put in I think there was another time in the 50s. 1850s, but I'd have to look up the Doctrine and Covenants on Wikipedia to find out which was which. So, yeah, I mean, this is not W.W. Phelps being referred to here. He is not going to have government power. He is not going to have power over the temple. Excuse me. He's not going to have authority. And to arrange by lot the inheritances of the saints, whose names are found, etc., in the book of the law of God. We just got over this. It's the clerk who records the information about inheritances. That's what 85 started off as a revelation on the clerk of the church. So if we go back, verse 1, it is the duty of the Lord's clerk. Keep a history, general church record of all things that transpire in Zion, and all those who consecrate properties, and receive inheritances legally from the bishop. Okay, so you can receive an inheritance from the bishop because he is a steward over the food, clothing, shelter for the people. That's why we have bishop storehouses. So inheritances, yes, the bishop can assign inheritances. But in regards to the temple and being a government ruler, no, that is not for the bishop. And so this got messed up big time. Somebody is putting something in here, and you know, Brigham Young is about to die, and it gets put in right before he dies. And what happened to Brigham Young? When he took his journey here to the Utah Valley, what did he become? Oh, he was the president of the church and was sustained by the membership. He didn't want to. The members wanted it to. No, come on, people. Don't give in to the biased fake news by those who have an agenda. Of course, everybody has to say Brigham Young is the chosen one of God. Otherwise, the church is a sham. So yes, they have no choice. But what did Brigham Young become? It wasn't just the president of the church to establish or set in order the house of God, the temples. Brigham Young also took on the scepter of power. He became the king of Deseret. See, when the United States came in and wanted to, or they had already taken possession of the Utah territory, they needed a governor for the Utah territory. Since Brigham Young was already in the position as king, they gave him a chance. You can be the governor of the Utah territory. The United States demoted Brigham Young in authority. He then became the governor. But then Brigham Young was still rebellious against the United States. So the United States came in and removed him and put in a non-Mormon as governor. And apparently, according to the records, there were a number of governors, almost yearly, after replacing Brigham Young as governor, before Brigham Young actually died. So Brigham Young never had the scepter of power over the territory of Utah ever again. The United States knocked him down. But yeah, this is referring to Brigham Young. And because, verse 8, what everybody's all, wow, we know exactly who this is referring to because of the wording that's used. 8, while that man who was called of God and appointed. That's Joseph Smith's wording for the president of the church, Joseph Smith's position. That putteth forth his hand to steady the ark of God. Hold on here. The ark of the covenant, that's what it's referring to, is when a priest servant was carrying the ark back. It started to wobble and was leaning over, about to fall, and he put up his hands to steady the ark. He did not have authority to do so because he was just a lowly priest. Only the high priest is allowed to touch the ark, to be in the Holy of Holies with the Ark of the Covenant. That's what the Bible is talking about here. That's what this is talking about here. They're talking about the president of the church not having authority as president of the church. Wow, bet they weren't teaching you that in seminary and institute, were they, Mormons? Nope, they weren't, because I didn't hear about it when I went to early morning seminary, and then went to institute at Rick's College, and then went to institute at the University of Lethbridge in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. They just don't teach it. There's no way they're going to teach this. But every Mormon back in that day when it came out, they knew what this was referring to. They saw this as a prophecy, though. They didn't see it as Brigham Young saw it, as an attempt to justify him taking over as president of the church in place of Joseph Smith. Remember, Joseph Smith was going to run for president of the United States. He thought he was the last days Messiah to restore the kingdom of God. Remember, this is the restored Church of Jesus Christ. President Nelson enforced it as he tries to tell people, you will say the full name of the church. You will not use nicknames unless you use restored Church of Jesus Christ. Wow. Okay. Don't get mad. Don't beat me. Don't beat me, master. Yeah. Racist. Gospel topic essays. Race and the priesthood. Brigham Young was a racist. Church admits that, but yet they still give him credit for having authority from God. And so then you get Elder Oaks, when he was an apostle, saying, it was God's will that the blacks be denied the priesthood and Brigham Young be racist. God's will. God is a racist. Yeah, okay, great. So why don't you guys just come out and admit that you guys are white nationalists? Trump did it. Why can't you? So, yeah. I mean, this is news for Mormons. Mormons don't realize this. But we are looking at a coup d'etat right here in the Doctrine and Covenants. And it was intended for Brigham Young. But as I discussed in my other video, it was God's way of fulfilling his law of Moses of justice when somebody comes to court accusing someone falsely and then issuing a punishment. This is the punishment that Brigham Young established for Joseph Smith. He's saying that God punished Joseph Smith because God, he claims, disapproved of Joseph Smith. And that's why Joseph Smith was murdered. He's blaming the victim. Guess what Trump did about this bomber this week? CNN, if they weren't reporting about how bad I am, this would have never happened to them. They're to blame. Wow, that's what Brigham Young did. Wow, white nationalism long before Trump. Amazing. The same exact pattern of behavior. So typical. Corruption is typical. You know, there's the Spaceballs. The classic line of the satirical Darth Vader character, played by the Who Shrunk My Kids character. I can't remember his name, but you know, he talks and says, and that's why bad will always reign. I can't remember the quote. I need to put it in here. I'm going to look for it. I will put it in right here, right now, so that you can see it.
So, Lone Star, now you see that evil will always triumph because good is dumb.
Golden gems, the little pleasures in life that help pass the time away from all the chaos. Oh man. Okay, so I'm uploading it to the Movie Maker program right now. So I'll continue on. Oh man. Priceless. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's actually evil that is dumb. They always get caught. You know, they try to be so clever to cover things up, and you know, that's what the Book of Mormon is warning about, Mormons. What did you think? You know, even President Benson acknowledged that there was comparison between the Book of Mormon with the last days. He was all about it, and we'll get to his talk that he gave to the Aaronic priesthood. And so we are in the greatest time ever. So many people have so many good things to say, and it's just, we got to take it all in to get everybody's input and then put it into a collage of comments. Oh man. Oh yeah, baby tooth. Okay. So yeah, verse 7 is saying, there will come a future time when a new president of the church will emerge, because verse 8 says that the current president of the church in the future, as was intended by Brigham Young, is going to die. And so Brigham Young was saying, oh no, it's a future time, even though he was justifying his position taking over for Joseph Smith. And I go over all the reasons why he had reason to hate the Smith family and want to take it over and establish a Freemasonic organization. It was all Brigham Young. And it's because Brigham Young had his Freemasonic temple, the brand new one that was built the year before, and the anti-Masonic movement that the Smith family were involved in causing, he was upset. And so his early converts were those who were disenfranchised Freemasonic members who wanted revenge on the anti-Freemasons. Oh man. And when they read the Book of Mormon, they recognize the symbolism. They recognize the plot that Joseph Smith is taking over from William Morgan to warn the United States of Donald Trump in the future. What? Yes. Yes. I already did it with the other videos. I showed you. This is the day and time. 2017, 2018. It's the President of the United States who is of the Illuminati. The Gadianton robbers. Hello? Chief Justice murdered? Oh, John Kennedy. Huh. They all knew way back then. They plotted it way back then. It was supposed to be a slow takeover to build the United States, corrupt it, control everything with the use of parties, which is communist by definition. Party government is communist. It's socialist republic. It's not representative republic, which is what we try to claim that we are, even though we don't use representative republic. The Constitution said we're supposed to be a constitutional republic. Remember, you Mormons know Joseph Smith prophesied that the Constitution would hang by a thread. That's because he knew of the threat to the United States. They were going to destroy the Constitution piece by piece until the final takeover. We've been taken over. We now have Trump Hitler in power. He controls the whole government. The United States are not united. They're segregated. Each state doing their own thing. But the majority of them are run by alt-right conservatives, Republicans. Utah is alt-right conservative. We're a part of the Illuminati threat. We were supposed to be the organization to go up against them. The army of God in the latter days. The elders of Israel. You see, in Joseph Smith's revelation or prophecy, some quote Joseph as saying an elder of the church will restore the Constitution. And others say elders, plural. You can't have a group restoring the Constitution. There's always a leader of the group. And so it is technically a leader, the last days Messiah. Joseph Smith knew about him, even though he thought, hey, why don't I try to be him? That's what, the restoration of the church. He was in the role of the last days Messiah. But then he was murdered, and he no longer became the last days Messiah. He became the Jesus figure, the one who died, the one who set the path in motion for the temple ordinances, for the way back to the kingdom of God in heaven. Go back to my Christian video. And so that's what's happening. That same exact pattern. And Emma, she did not come to Utah. She didn't like Brigham Young. Go figure. He was involved in orchestrating his murder. And so, she wanted nothing to do with him. And besides, Joseph told her it will be a future son. She didn't understand that. She thought it was the son in your younger son, or the son in her womb. She wasn't clear. And none of them worked and panned out. So it's not Joseph's literal sons. It's a spiritual son, someone who will come from the church that he established, restored. Just like the pattern. Spaceballs, hilarious. Okay, so do you see what's going on here? This is dark stuff. This was a coup. The church was overrun by a coup d'etat. All because our family passed down from generation to generation. Yeah, John Solomon Fulmer, your ancestor, he gave Joseph Smith a gun. I don't know why the church isn't talking about it. We all knew. I should be using a German accent because Fulmer is German. Vollmer in German originally. And coming to America, you can't use Vollmer. That's not understandable in America. You must use different name. You are now Fulmer. Okay, whatever. Wow. So, wow. So, yeah, Mormons, why are you still in the church? I'm never going back. I mean, yes, I was threatened not to come back if I'm going to insist that the Book of Mormon is the official doctrine of the church. But now that I've learned, now that I did my research, there ain't no way in heaven or hell that I'm going back. Screw them. And so why then are you? All you have to do is do your research like you do for a school paper, like you do for your job. It's simple and easy to do. You know how to do it. Just do it. Remember, Kimball? Do it. And then Nike took over and made it Just Do It for their slogan. Kimball ain't such a good guy either, but nevertheless. Okay, so, One Mighty and Strong, as Thus Saith Men, published in the Deseret News in 1905 AD. Seriously? We're going to get confused on that? And in the Improvement Era, 1907 AD. Oh man. So here it is. I had printed it out and I found it online. Because the church is trying to cover these things up, make it difficult for people to find. Oh man. And by LDS church authorities. You mean the First Presidency message? It took them a while for them to actually title them, hey, why don't we title them First Presidency Messages rather than this thing that they're doing here. Wow. Okay. And I'm not going to be able to read it all because it's numerous pages, 10, 12, 14, 15 pages. Joseph F. Smith, John R. Winder, Anthony H. Lund, First Presidency. Oh man, but this is chock full of goodness. Things to laugh loud about around a campfire. Okay, so the reason for this was that members of the church knew what this meant. And, 1876 is when it was first put in. So we're looking at 30 years later. There were several people who accused successive church leaders of being verse 8 because they understood it. They thought, this is the prophecy come true. There it is, verse 8, you're the false prophet. Remember, John the Revelator said there was going to be a false prophet too, right along the time with the beast. Trump. I've already discussed it. Watch all my videos. Get caught up. And so, yeah, there's going to be a false prophet and a beast. Trump is the beast in the United States where the total solar eclipse happened, indicating it. And then there was a total lunar eclipse, meaning the false prophet. Guess where? The United States. Babylon is the United States. Great and Abominable Church is the church that started up in the United States among the Gentiles. What? Yes, they all knew. And so, yeah, Joseph F. Smith had had enough. Nobody dares tell me I'm the fulfillment of verse 8. Yeah, I have the power. Fight the suppressed. You might remember this as the fight the power sign. So, if I have to explain my joke, it's not funny. Okay, so yeah, here we go. He's trying to apologize and explain what other members are feeling and thinking. You can't do that. Nobody tells me how I think. I watch the news. both sides, whether it's the Fox News or MSNBC, they all have people saying, the American people want this. The American people are appalled. Excuse me? You do not speak for me. I speak for me. Give me the facts and the evidence, and I will decide. Okay, so he says, perhaps no other passage in the revelations of the Lord in this dispensation has given rise to so much speculation as this one. So already he's downplaying it. He's calling people who are talking about this, and there are a lot back then who were talking about this. And he's downplaying it, saying it's all fake news. You guys are troublemakers. You guys are speculating. That's what you get when you get a prophecy. Everybody wants to know when it will be fulfilled, how it will be fulfilled. Because they named the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Of course, members of the Latter-day Saints want to know what's going to happen in the future. They want to know. So of course they're talking about this. This is huge. This is the takeover of the presidency. And so, and then here he's belittling people. He's using ad hominem as Trump does. Also, it has been used by vain and foolish men to bolster up their vagaries of speculation, and in some cases their pretensions to great power and high positions they were to attain in the church. So yeah, you had nutcases back then too, but notice what he's doing. He's calling these people mentally ill. He's calling them ad hominem and calling them mentally ill. How dare you challenge my authority, he's saying. You're mentally ill. They did it back then. Amazing. They're not doing anything new today. They're doing exactly what has been done century after century. Nothing new under the sun. Is that in Proverbs or is that Ecclesiastes? But yeah, there were actual people who thought, you know what? He's not speaking for the Lord. He's saying that blacks aren't to have the priesthood because they're evil in the pre-existence or the pre-mortality. You know what? I'm smarter than he is. Maybe I'm verse 7. And so yeah, you get people who think, I'm he who will fulfill this prophecy. I am Don Quixote. I will charge against the windmills and save the world. The Man of La Mancha. Great play. Alright, and so, yeah, in a word, some have made claims that they were the particular individual mentioned in the Revelation, the one mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand. And he goes through the whole quote of verse 7. And there he goes to insult again. One would think in such a matter as this, that sufficient native modesty would assert itself to restrain a man from, turn the page, Metallica, announcing himself as the one upon whom such high honors are to be conferred. So he's talking about his position of authority as a high honor. Wow, he has betrayed his and his grandfather was Hiram Smith. How quickly families betray us. Mom and Dad. Alright. Okay. So yeah, I don't want to really read the whole thing or go over it. But here he says, so long as that church remains in the earth, and we have the assurance from the Lord that it will now remain in the earth forever. Oops, Joseph Smith was murdered. Bye-bye. Not fulfilled. So it's not going to be on the earth forever. It's gone. It's now apostasy time. So these are the tools that corrupt leaders use to deceive their followers, to establish themselves in authority. And members of the church knew all about this. They wanted to know, when is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? Our beloved prophet, how is he going to be a bad guy? What's going to happen? Are we going to establish the Jews in Jerusalem? What's going on? You know, people are concerned. And it's now doctrine that only the living prophet is to be heard. No one else. Even though the prophets, they say, you need to listen to us too. But members now call everyone else fake news. That's right. Alt-right conservatives now consider the Book of Mormon and the words of Jesus as fake news. They're dead, they're gone, they're not the living president of the church. These people are so frustrating. And so yes, I've had a woman who has newly joined my subscriber list on YouTube, and she gets frustrated with me. She joined because I was, criticizing the LDS Church, but she doesn't understand why I keep doing it. And so she's gotten frustrated with me. And so I've had to talk to her about it and explain. I was deceived for 48 years. I was abused this whole time, and I didn't see the big picture of why. And so now I see clearly. So when I listen to Nelson at April conference, where he takes away the office of high priest from elders, he let the current high priest keep it, but all the elders no longer can attain to a high priest. And I went over it. A high priest gets to go into the Holy of Holies, to enter back into the presence of God. And Nelson took it away. He twisted one scripture from the Doctrine and Covenants to justify his position, and had President Oaks do it for him to explain it to us. I knew he was not called of God. Did you notice what he said? That he is legitimate from Brigham Young. Watch it again. He does not say he's legitimate from Joseph Smith. He says from Brigham Young. These guys know they're evil. And then he goes and announces, oh yeah, we're in collusion with Russia. We're going to build a temple there. But beware of fake news. He warned the members. There's going to be news reports coming out. There's going to be speculation. There's going to be negative things. Yeah. You do not build in Russia unless Russia gets you for a crime that they can hold against you in the future to control you. That's what they've done to Trump. That's how they do it. That's their modus operandi. Oh my God. And then he talks to the youth and establishes the Hitler Youth. And I just, oh my God. This is a nightmare, guys. Do you understand what Hitler Youth was? What they did? They indoctrinated the youth to the alt-right Nazi conservative agenda. Nelson banned the children from looking on social media. He said for 8 days, but I wonder how many of the youth have given up social media altogether. Wink, wink. Because that's what Mormons do. When their prophet says something, Mormons take it to the extreme. That's why you've probably heard, oh, Mormons are not allowed to drink caffeine. No, we're allowed to drink caffeine. I will not have my dew ripped from my hands over my cold, dead body. Nobody lays a finger on my dew. So, yeah, it's not in there. But Mormons have made it a commandment. They've created their own laws for the church. And so BYU will not sell caffeine on their campus. Wow. And so yes, I'm concerned for the youth, the Mormon youth. It's not the Hitler Youth, it's the Mormon Youth now. We're changing the name so everybody cannot associate us with the past evil. You know, he even tricked them. Study your Book of Mormon before this youth fireside. And then he doesn't even go over the Book of Mormon. And what did he do? What has he got you youth doing? If you're watching, you're a rebel. Shame on you. You're being naughty. He had them go on a conversion mission. And why? Have you checked the conversion numbers? Because in April, they're no longer publishing them during conference. It's because they're losing members. Not just with members who are walking off, but they're not converting at the rate we used to be. And remember, Monson switched the dates to bring in more missionaries. And yet, the numbers of conversions dropped. But seminary, aren't they being instructed properly? No, they're not. We're sending out kids younger into the mission field who don't even have testimonies yet, who don't know the doctrine, who don't know their history, and they're going out into the world that is more informed about the church than they are. And they're getting slammed on. 2 of my 3 kids came home early from their mission because they couldn't handle it. Part of that is because of them being kidnapped and thinking that they are their father's children who the government of Utah says is mentally ill. Remember? You blame somebody for being mentally ill when they challenge you. That has repercussions. You can't just make a false accusation of mental illness on somebody to shut them up, to silence them, to turn others against them. But that's what the church did. Joseph F. Smith, president of the church, used propaganda techniques to turn the members against his critics, calling them the fake news, the enemy of the people, mentally ill. That's how they do it. They've always done it. And so, yeah, Joseph F. Smith, he tries to say, oh, it's referring to W. Phelps. And that's our conclusion, and it's not a prophecy, and it will never happen in the future. You will believe us or you will be excommunicated. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you're righteous, and that's what God wanted done. You're not fulfilling verse 8, are you? However, apparently that memory was lost on David O. McKay, president of the church, in 1966. I believe it was his son, Robert R. McKay. David O. McKay was not able to attend that session, and he had written a talk that he had his son, I assume, I believe Robert is his son, and read it instead. And it was on Saturday, April 9th, 1966 at 7 p.m. And it was the general priesthood session of the 136th annual conference of the church. On my website, I posted this as a necessary proclamation for all members of the church. Go to my website. I think I titled it Must Have for All Mormons. So go to my search engine on the home page, type in Must Have. That should bring it up for you. I tried looking for it through a different president of the church, Heber J. Grant, and it messed me up, and so I had to search a different thing. So maybe even David O. McKay will be found in the search engine for this. And so I am going to read parts of this, if not the whole thing. It's just one page. This is 12 size font, and I was able to fit it on one page. And so, yeah, if you want a copy, free copy, if you try to download it, Scribd will force you to be a member, and if you've never been a member of Scribd before, you'll get a free trial period of a month. Otherwise, you got to pay like 10 or 11 bucks with the tax or whatever that's added onto it. I have never paid for Scribd. I keep doing the free versions of it. But if you want a copy of this for yourself, all you have to do is expand it into the full screen, and then you have to click off the Scribd advertising pop-up, and then just do a copy and paste onto a Word program. And that's how I did this, because of other complications that I'm having. Yeah, it's easy to obtain. So everybody can have a free copy from my website, from that blog post that I did. And this was about, and this is the title of it, Statement Concerning the Position of the Church on Communism. The church has never done a statement on Nazism. There was one president who wrote a letter to one of the branches of government, the Secretary of Interior, maybe, I can't remember which, and there he said that all isms are to be anathematized, basically. I said the word basically. I keep hearing it on MSNBC. Show after show, person after person, they all say basically, 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 and that was frustrating me. I didn't like it, and I knew that I was going to end up getting trapped into saying it, and here I go saying it. So, yeah, the church was anti-communism because they are Nazis. That's why they're anti-communism. So they had no problems during the McCarthy era saying, oh no, we are not communism, even though it seems that Joseph Smith was establishing a socialist economic system. No, we're not communism, even though our governmental structure is a priesthood party, thus communistic. We're not communist. We trust us. We're Nazis. They would never say that, but they definitely said, no, not communist. And, you know, then you get the members who come out thinking they're defending the church and saying, oh, this is real communism, and this is our church. Never trust an apologist. They lie. That's the definition of them. Defenders of a position using unsound reasoning. That's an apologist. And so here he says, in order that there may be no misunderstandings by bishops, stake presidents, and others regarding members of the church participating in non-church meetings to study and become informed on the Constitution of the United States, communism, etc. I wish to make the following statements. So, this is huge. You know, everybody waits for conference because that's when the big announcements will come out. And if no big announcement comes out of conference, everybody's disappointed. It's a Mormon thing. And then you have Mormons who try to apologize when no new thing comes out, no big announcement comes out. They say, oh, well, you have to have the Spirit, and you know, if you don't have the Spirit, then you're the bad person. They blame the victim. Unbelievable. Come on, guys. Stop. And so, yeah, he's saying, church members are at perfect liberty to act according to their own consciences in the matter of safeguarding our way of life. This was the nuclear era. This was the nuclear threat, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the communist threat to America. You know, we will destroy America with nuclear bombs. You know, how did Russia get it? Oh, it was American citizens. But yeah, Russia sent Russian citizens to America to infiltrate America, to be Americans, to appear as Americans, have kids as Americans, to shop, to go to PTA meetings, to go to the Boy Scouts, to whatever was back then. They've been doing it the whole time. That's a threat of war. But our United States has let them do it. They're all over our United States. They're all over YouTube. They have the fake accounts posing as Americans, trying to sow division. You know, Trump is saying a lot of good things. He's helping to defend against communism. I can't remember your name, so you're getting away with it this video. But on the other video I did, I mentioned him by name, and it's still in my comments. Because he's a Mormon who thinks that Trump is saving America from communists. And then he deleted his comment, but it's still showing up on my email and showing up in my little notifications on YouTube. So I know what you said. Greg, Peter, I can't remember. So you're getting lucky that I'm not naming you in this video too. But now that I've revealed it, anybody can now go back and search for my comment about that. And the video where I talk about him also. And it was a brief comment in the video. The comment is where I really hammer down on him. And okay, so where did I leave off? Because there was more to this. Okay. They are, referring to church members, of course, encouraged to honor the highest standards of the gospel and to work to preserve their own freedoms. They are free to participate in non-church meetings that are held to warn people of the threat of communism or any other theory or principle that will deprive us of our free agency, Trumpism, and or individual liberties, alt-right conservatism, vouchsafed by the Constitution of the United States. Anybody want to be a part of an organizational meeting where we discuss how corrupt Utah government has been this whole time and how it's now being personified by the President of the United States? We have white supremacist gangs rising up, causing riots, beating people up, destroying property. They're going on a rampage because of Trump. They did it last year with the Charlottesville massacre of the one girl who was protesting against hate. And then it sort of died down from our understanding. But nope. Rachel Maddow last night revealed that it's been going on stronger than ever with Trump in power. And they finally caught one guy, of a leader of one of the white supremacists in Southern California, which is what I was talking about, guys. I know alt-right conservatives. I know you. I know your thinking. I grew up with alt-right conservatives. I grew up with the neocons before they became neocons. The alt-right conservatives before they became alt-right conservatives. I know you guys. I was in your midst. All right. Okay, and then the church, he gives a statement. The church has to remain neutral because the government told us to do so. And so we can't tell you which party to be a part of, wink, wink, Republican. We're not going to interfere within the Constitution. The Lord has declared he established. Okay, here's the Constitution as divinely inspired. He's quoting from the Doctrine and Covenants. You know, come on, guys. Have you read the Constitution even? Have you even applied it to how the laws of Utah are being used in violation of the United States Constitution? Remember, Constitution, divinely inspired by God. And yet, you want a takeover of our Constitution and our rights. Oh, please protect us. See, that's what happens. You get robbed, and instead of saying, hey, you guys are neglecting the poor, forcing them to rob, you instead say, put police on the streets to take away our rights. Allow the police to search and seize whoever they want. Protect us. See, that's what I was worried about with this bombing threat, is that it would be used as a political ploy to take away more rights from us. Because that's what 9/11 did. Remember the Patriot Act? 9/11 was a false flag, but thousands were murdered. They blamed the wrong people to justify going to war in the Middle East and establishing neoconism. I just made up that word, I guess. Neoconism. Must quote me in the patent. I own that, or whatever. If it becomes popular, I'll know you. I'll know where you got it from. I started it. And so, yeah, the church believes in the Constitution. The Constitution says it is the supreme law of the land. We were supposed to have a constitutional republic, not a representative republic, not a socialist republic, but a constitutional republic. And nobody understands what that means. It means that the Constitution of the land is to be the guiding document for our lives, the citizens' lives. The Book of Mormon calls it the laws of Mosiah, the law of Mosiah. When he established the reign of the judges, he took away the executive and the legislative and created a constitution for the people of the Nephites, and had judges, because you have to have judges to judge according to the Constitution, if it's being followed, if people are violating it, committing crimes. But then you have the problem that emerged: lawyers get paid by the cases that they bring before the courts. And even the judges get paid according to the number of cases that they get. So you have an economic corruption that occurs from this system. And that starts the process downward. And so I have a solution for that. I've presented it in my blog, on my website, and in books. Yeah, you got to get rid of money from the equation. You can't have people forced to pay for justice. You can't have people get paid for the judicial proceedings, because that leads to corruption. That's why police cannot be forced to get tickets to drum up revenue for the city, and then punish police officers who don't get their quota. It's that simple. We have to do away with money. We need a new system. And I've already come up with it. And so, and we are against communism because we're Nazis. We consider it the greatest satanical threat to peace. Not Nazism. Communism is the greatest satanical threat to peace, prosperity, and the spread of God's work among men. So yeah, they were just a part of the fear mongering, trying to get the government to back off of the people making the connections to the church as communist. But nothing about Nazism. But we therefore commend and encourage every person and every group who is sincerely seeking to study constitutional principles and awaken a sleeping and apathetic people to the alarming conditions that are rapidly advancing about us. We wish all of our citizens were participating in some kind of self-education to better appreciate what is happening now and what they can do about it. And then I brought this up in a bishop's council before I was kicked out of the church by the bishop, because I saw the connection when Robert Mueller was assigned to investigate the president of the church. And remember, this was 66. Supporting the FBI, the police, the congressional committees investigating communism, and various organizations that are attempting to awaken the people through educational means, and a policy we warmly endorse for all our people. So a president of the church said, hey, the Mueller investigation needs to be supported and sustained and not stopped by the president. Okay. We hate Christians and Christianity. No, he's quoting a Russian commissioner. Commissar. But yeah, he's quoting a Russian diplomat, the Commissar of Education. We hate Christians and Christianity. Even the best of them must be considered our worst enemies. Christian love is an obstacle to the development of the revolution. Down with love for one's neighbor. What we want is hate. Mission accomplished. Only then shall we conquer the universe. Wow. Then Elder Benson at the time spoke in October at in the tabernacle. It was not a church function. It was after conference. And talked about this very talk. And he used it in connection with the prophecy that the Constitution would hang by a thread. And then when he became president, he spoke to the Aaronic priesthood holders. And I was a teacher, just put in as a teacher in March. So he talked in April to us, and I just became a teacher. And he'd also talked to CES instructors in Southern California, where he gave his famous "To the Youth of the Noble Birthright" speech. But in the conference, he spoke directly to us. We will bear up the kingdom in the last days. We are the royal army of God, that God had been holding us in reserve from before the foundations of the earth, to come to earth at this particular time. Now, of course, that's all propagandic rhetoric, except for the prophecy right here. See, Benson is also the one responsible for the 17 I can't remember the full title of the talk, but it's the 17 Principles of Presidents of the Church. We will never lead you astray. You must trust us. Yeah, except for the prophecy says it's going to be a president of the church. Oh, but yeah, Joseph F. Smith said, no, it's not going to happen, man. It's not prophecy. So yeah, we're going extra time on this one, boys and girls. So we're going on 2 hours for this. So yeah, Mormons know, but they've been told not to know. They've been told to suppress it. They don't comment on it. They don't have commentary on it. The church will not talk about this any further because Joseph F. Smith settled it. But they won't reveal his first presidency message so that members can be reminded of this over and over again. What? What's this about? You're saying it's a prophecy, but Joseph F. Smith said it's not? What happens when you tell a kid or a person, don't go there, don't look in there, don't read that, don't do that? What happens when you tell people that? I know, I was the rebellious kid when I was growing up. I did that. I went there. I read that. That's what we do. We want to know. Why is this being prohibited? Why is this being censored? Why is this banned? I want to know. And instead of properly teaching people, you know, it's okay to read Mein Kampf as long as we are taught this statement that he says in this chapter, in this sentence, this is false. This reveals a hatred towards mankind. So it's okay to read the Satanic Bible as long as you understand that when he says it's okay to have friends with family and the ones you want to have friends with, but it's also okay to use and abuse whoever you want in order to get what you want. That's hatred. As long as we teach that certain things are wrong and why it's wrong, not just scaring people that it's wrong, but actually pointing out, no, this is wrong, this is hateful. We are all related throughout this world. I've talked about this over and over again. Our DNA is less than a 0.2% difference. Less than. Now, some are further from the percentage of us than others, but it's 0.2%. That means we're all of the same race. We're humans. There should be no hate. And yet there is. And so I'll stop here because this is close to, it's at least 1.5. Can't remember. I think it was 33 minutes when I put in the Spaceballs thing. So 1.5 hours. So this will be part 1. I'll have to change the title to part 8A, I guess. Okay, so we'll continue with part B, part 8B next.